In the USA, everything moves fast. People walk fast, talk fast, work fast. They even rest fast. I came to New York with the idea that I had to make it adapt, make it earn money, make it be normal. My life became a schedule. Coffee on the go. Work without breaks. Evenings with my phone because I have to be in the know. I didn't notice how I was losing myself, because everyone around me was running too. And I thought, this is normal. This is adulthood. This is America. But one morning I woke up and couldn't get up. Not physically, psychologically. My body was like frozen. My mind was like overloaded. My soul was like lost. I sat on the edge of my bed and thought, I don't want another day that goes by like the last one. I don't want another conversation in which I'm not present. I don't want another coffee that I don't feel. It wasn't a burnout. It was an awakening. I realized, I'm not living. I'm functioning. And I decided to stop. Not forever. At least for a day. I turned off my phone. Cancelled meetings. Went outside without headphones, without a plan. I walked slowly. And it was strange. 'Cause my body is used to rushing. 'Cause my thoughts are used to planning. I sat in the park. I sat. And for the first time in a long time did nothing. And something changed. Not outside. But inside. I began to hear. Birds. The sound of trees. Myself. This wasn't rest. This was the beginning of a different rhythm. I am Valentine. And I am beginning to learn to be slow. Because speed doesn't always mean life. And slowness doesn't always mean loss. After that day in the park I thought something would change. That the world would adjust to my new rhythm. But it didn't. It didn't even notice. On Monday I went back to work. In the office, as usual, calls, deadlines. Come on quickly. I tried to speak more slowly. Listen more carefully. And immediately I heard. Are you sick? Are you okay? You're kind of strange today. Smiled. I said, I just want to be a little slower. But people didn't understand. Because slowness is not something they value here. In the States, slowness is often perceived as weakness, as inefficiency, as a problem. And I wasn't a problem. I just didn't want to be a machine anymore. I went to lunch alone. No phone. No conversation. Just sitting in a little cafe on a Brooklyn street, watching the barista draw a heart on the coffee. And this heart was real. Not a template. Not automatic. I thought, maybe he's slow too? I started to notice people like that. The ones who don't shout. The ones who don't run. The ones who don't try to be everywhere. They were like shadows, invisible but alive. One of them was an elderly man I met on the subway. He was reading a book. Not on his phone. Not in his headphones. Just reading. I sat down next to him. And we were silent. But it was the most real conversation I'd had all day. I started to change my habits. No news in the morning. No social media in the evening. I started to cook breakfast slowly. Slowly. Even breathe slowly. And it wasn't easy. Because the world was pressing. Why don't you answer right away? Why don't you want to go to another meeting? Why aren't you on topic? I wasn't on topic. I was on myself. One day a colleague said, "You've become different." I answered. And became myself. It wasn't a struggle. It was practice. Slowness is not a protest. It's a choice. I started writing. Not for publication. Not for likes. Just for myself. And every word was like a step. Not fast. Not loud. But mine. I am Valentine. And I am learning to be slow even when the world is screaming faster. Because in the silence I hear myself. And in myself is life. It was on a Tuesday. I went to a bookstore in Manhattan, the one where it always smells of coffee and old paper. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. I just wanted to be among things that don't scream. I was standing by a shelf of poetry when I heard a voice. This book is like breathing. It's not read quickly. I turned around. She was holding a volume by Mary Oliver. Blonde hair, calm eyes, a voice like silence that doesn't scare. I like slow books too, I said. Then you're probably not from New York, she smiled. We sat on the sofa by the window. We talked not about work, not about plans, but about how hard it is to be slow in a city that never sleeps. Her name was Yulia. She came from Portland, but she had lived here for a year. She worked in a small cafe, wrote poetry, and walked every day, just so she wouldn't forget that she was alive. People think that slowness is weakness, she said. And I think it's courage, I replied. We started seeing each other. Not often. Not on schedule. Just when we wanted to. And each meeting was like a pause in a symphony that finally sounds. Yulia didn't rush. She didn't interrupt. She didn't ask, what's next? She just was. And that was new to me. Because I was used to people who wanted results. And she wanted presence. One evening we were sitting on the roof of her house in Brooklyn. She was reading me her poems. I was silent. And that silence was like a hug. Aren't you afraid to be slow? She asked. I was. But now I'm afraid to be fast. Because then I'll lose myself again. She smiled. And I realized. Slowness is not loneliness. It's a space in which something real can be born. We started writing together. Not for the public. For ourselves. Her texts were like water. Mine were like stones. But together they created a shore. I am Valentine. And I am learning to be slow not only for myself, but in order to be close to those who have also chosen silence. Because in silence a connection is born. And in slowness, love. I am Valentine. And I am learning to be slow even when the world says, faster or you will disappear. Because I don't want to disappear. I want to be. It all started with an idea we wrote on a napkin. What if we could create a place where you can just be? Not a cafe. Not a studio. Not an office. Space. We called it silence. We rented a small space in Brooklyn. A former workshop with concrete walls and one window. We painted everything in warm colors. We put pillows, books, a kettle. And we wrote on the door. You don't have to be productive here. You can be yourself here. First no one came. People walked by, looked, but didn't come in. Because slowness is scary. Because silence is unusual. And then the first woman came. She just sat down. And cried. We didn't ask. We were just there. Then a student who said, I don't know why I'm here. I'm just tired. Then, an elderly man who brought his poem. Then a girl who drew on the floor. Then someone who was just sleeping. We had no rules. We had rhythm. There was no Wi-Fi in Tisha. There was no music. There were no expectations. Just space. And presence. Yulia held poetry evenings. Morning conversations about life. We didn't earn much. But every day was like breathing. One day my former boss came. He sat down, was silent, and then said, I didn't know that this was possible. Smiled. Because I didn't know either. We started receiving letters. Thank you for creating a place where you don't have to be someone. I found myself in your silence. You taught me to be slow. It wasn't business. It was a culture. I am Valentine. And I am learning to be slow not only for myself, but for others. Because slowness is not isolation. It is an invitation. Silence became famous. Someone wrote about us on a blog. Then in a local newspaper. Then a letter came from a large company. We want to invest. You can open 5 more such spaces. This will be a revolution. I was sitting with Yulia in the kitchen. She was holding a letter, I was holding a cup of tea. And we were silent. Because it was a moment of choice. We could become successful. We could have a team, offices, logos. We could bring slowness to the masses. But something about it sounded fast. If we scale, I said, we will lose the rhythm. If we become a brand, we will cease to be a space. Yulia nodded. Slowness does not tolerate haste. Even with good intentions. We decided not to expand. Not because we were afraid. But because we cared. We left silence small. And it remained alive. People continued to come. Every day. Once a month. Some only once but forever. We did not become big. We became deep. One evening I was sitting by the window. Outside, noise, cars, advertising. And inside, someone was reading a poem. Someone was drawing. Someone was just breathing. And I thought. I learned to be slow. And it did not make me less alive. It made me more real. I am Valentine. And I do not want to be everywhere. I want to be here.